I'm alone in the attic, and something just whispered my name. It wasn't human low, guttural, like it slithered out of the shadows. My hands tremble as I clutch the diary I found, its pages brittle, stained with what looks like tears or blood. I'm Ethan, a 22-year-old junior at Bowdoin College, and I swear on my life this is real. This happened to me in September 2024, and I'm still not okay. If you've ever felt a presence in a room you can't explain, stick with me and drop your own stories in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in this. It all started last fall, September 2024, when I moved into a rundown Victorian house on Harpswell Road in Brunswick, Maine. The rent was dirt cheap for $100 a month for a creaky, two-story place with warped floors and a porch that sagged like it was tired of standing. My roommate, Jake, a bio major who practically lived at the lab, thought it was a steal. Brunswick is your classic New England college town, cobblestone streets, cozy bookstores, the smell of salt air from the nearby coast. But this house, it felt wrong from the moment we stepped inside. The air was thick, like it was pressing against you, and there was a faint metallic smell, like old pennies, that lingered in the upstairs hallway. The landlord, Mr. Pelletier, was a chain-smoking guy in his 60s who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He didn't mention the house's history, just grumbled about the furnace and told us not to mess with the attic door because it sticks. I should have pressed him, but I was too excited about the space. The attic was massive, with slanted ceilings and a single round window that let in this eerie, gray light, like the sun didn't want to touch it. I thought it'd be perfect for my film projects, maybe a quiet spot to study. But the first time I climbed those narrow stairs, my chest tightened. It wasn't just cold up there, it was suffocating, like the air was holding its breath. And that smell, that metallic tang, was stronger, almost choking. I found the diary on my second day in the house, hidden under a loose floorboard near the attic window. It was small, leather-bound, the kind of thing you'd see in an antique shop, with EH carved into the cover. My initials. That sent a chill down my spine, but I told myself it was just a coincidence. The pages were yellowed, some stuck together, and the ink was faded but legible. It belonged to Eliza Hawthorne, who lived here in 1897 with her husband, Thomas, a fisherman. Her early entries were mundane notes about mending socks, baking bread, attending church. But as I read on, my stomach started to knot. She wrote about Thomas changing, coming home late, his clothes reeking of whiskey and seaweed. He'd lock himself in his study, muttering about debts and a promise to the sea. One entry, dated October 10, 1897, made my blood run cold. Thomas brought it home last night, a black stone, smooth as glass, wrapped in sailcloth. He says it's our salvation, that it'll pay our debts. But when I looked at it, I felt it staring back. Last night, I heard whispers from his study, not his voice, something else. I fear we've brought a curse into this house. I read that entry at midnight, the house silent except for the groan of old pipes. When I closed the diary, I heard it footsteps, slow, heavy, like someone pacing barefoot in the attic. Thump, thump, thump. My heart slammed against my ribs. Jake was at his girlfriend's, so I was alone. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, but it didn't make me feel safer. I crept to the attic door, every creak of the floorboards screaming in my ears. The footsteps stopped the moment I touched the knob. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like hours. Nothing. Just silence so thick it felt alive. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that black stone, imagined it hidden somewhere in the house, watching me. My mind raced. Why my initials? Why did it feel like the diary was meant for me to find? The next morning, I showed Jake the diary. He skimmed a page, rolled his eyes, and said, "Old houses creak, Ethan. You're freaking yourself out." But his voice wavered, like he didn't fully believe it. I couldn't let it go. I went back to the attic, half hoping the diary would be gone, but it was still there, its weight heavier than it should have been. Eliza's later entries were worse. She wrote about nightmares, shadowy figures at the foot of her bed, their faces blurred but their eyes burning. She described objects moving, a teacup sliding off the table, shattering on the floor, a door she'd locked swinging open in the night. Thomas grew erratic, locking himself in his study, speaking in a voice she didn't recognize, low, guttural, like he was answering something. The final entry, November 2nd, 1897, was scrawled in a panic. "He's gone. Took the stone and vanished into the storm. But it's still here. The whispers call my name. The house won't let me leave. I see her in the shadows, a woman with no face. God forgive us." The diary ended there. Blank pages followed, like Eliza ran out of words or time. I dug into Brunswick's archives online, my hands clammy as I typed. I found an 1898 newspaper clipping about a woman found dead in a house on Harpswell Road, ruled a suicide by hanging. No name, but the address matched. I felt sick. Was it Eliza? What was the stone? And why was it calling me? That night, the footsteps came again, louder, angrier, like someone was stomping. I recorded it, the audio picking up the thuds and a faint whisper, a woman's voice, saying my name, Ethan. Ethan. I played it for Jake the next day, and his face went white. "That's not normal," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We searched the attic, pulling up floorboards, checking every corner. Nothing but dust and spiderwebs. But the air felt heavier, the metallic smell sharper, like blood. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. The footsteps came every night, always after I read the diary. Whispers followed me during the day, faint but clear, echoing my name from empty rooms. I'd catch glimpses of something, a shadow, tall and thin, darting across the hallway or standing at the edge of my vision. My heart would race, my palms sweating, but when I turned, it was gone. I stopped sleeping, my eyes bloodshot, my grades tanking. Jake started staying at his girlfriend's more, leaving me alone with the house. I couldn't blame him, but it made the dread worse. I was terrified to be there, but I couldn't afford to leave. I threw myself into research, desperate for answers. The Brunswick Historical Society had a dusty archive in a converted church, and I spent hours there, flipping through brittle records. I found a mention of Thomas Hawthorne in an 1897 police log suspected of smuggling, tied to a ring of fishermen trafficking contraband up the Maine coast. There were whispers of something darker, artifacts stolen from shipwrecks, objects rumored to be cursed. One report mentioned a fisherman who vanished after claiming he'd found a stone that spoke. My hands shook as I read it. That had to be Thomas. That had to be the stone. I became obsessed with finding it. I tore apart the attic, checking every inch, my nerves frayed to breaking. Jake helped when he could, but I could tell he thought I was unhinged. "You need to chill, man," he said, but his eyes kept darting to the attic door. We found nothing, no stone, no clues, just that oppressive silence. Then one night, I woke to scratching, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging across wood. It was coming from my bedroom wall. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd pass out. I grabbed a flashlight, my hands slick with sweat, and followed the sound. It led to my closet, where the wallpaper was peeling, curling like dead skin. I tore it back, my breath hitching, and found a small, locked door, barely 3 feet high, hidden behind the plaster. I called Jake, and we pried it open with a crowbar, the wood splintering under the pressure. Inside was a crawl space, damp and reeking of that metallic smell, now so strong it made my eyes water. At the far end, half buried in dirt, was a black stone, smooth as glass, about the size of a fist. It didn't reflect light, it swallowed it, like a hole in the world. My stomach twisted, a wave of nausea hitting me. Jake reached for it, but I grabbed his arm. "Don't touch it," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Eliza said it's cursed." That night, the house came alive. The footsteps were deafening, shaking the walls. The whispers turned to screams, a woman's voice, raw and desperate. "Get it out. Get it out." Objects moved, my keys slid off the table. My laptop screen flickered on and off. I saw her, just for a second, a shadowy figure in the hallway, her face blurred, but her eyes wide, pleading. I screamed, stumbling back, my heart in my throat. Jake heard it too, his face ashen. We didn't sleep. We sat in the living room, lights on, clutching coffee mugs, too scared to move. I couldn't take it anymore. At dawn, I wrapped the stone in a towel, my hands trembling so bad I nearly dropped it. I drove to the Androscoggin River, the nearest body of water, and threw the stone in. Watching it sink into the black current, The air shifted, like a weight lifted, but my chest still felt tight, like something was clinging to me. When I got back, the footsteps were gone. The whispers stopped. The house felt empty, but not in a good way, like it was waiting. We moved out a week later, crashing with friends until we found a new place. I left the diary behind, hoping it'd stay buried with the house's secrets. I heard the new tenants didn't last a month, something about weird noises and bad vibes. I tried to move on, but the dread followed me, a shadow I couldn't shake. Here's the twist. A month later, I got an email from the Historical Society. They'd found a letter in an old ledger written by Thomas Hawthorne in 1898. He hadn't vanished, he'd been arrested for smuggling, raving about a stone that spoke to the dead. He swore he'd hidden it in the house to protect Eliza, but she'd found it, convinced it had trapped her soul. She took her own life, hanging herself in the attic, believing it was the only way to escape. Thomas claimed the stone was tied to an old shipwreck, a relic from a forgotten cult that promised wealth but demanded blood. He never told anyone where he hid it. So how did I find it? And why did it call my name? I don't have all the answers. The house is still there, rotting on Harpswell Road, waiting for its next tenant. I keep wondering if I really got rid of the stone or if it's still out there, waiting for me. If you've ever lived in a place that felt alive, that felt wrong, drop your story in the comments. I need to know I'm not crazy, or maybe I am. Maybe some things don't let go.